So after waiting inside for a couple of hours, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm not going to stay here all night. And I just walked out, and a guy had a shocker like as soon as I walked out and just fucking zapped me. And, I don't even remember all the details because my buddy told me, and he's like, I dropped down for a minute to my knees, and then I just got up, and I was like, it's on. And I was just like punching as many people as I could see in the face. Hey guys, I'm back with an interesting story from my first year in China, actually. So this is way back in 2007 when I lived in Kunming. I actually got jumped by a Chinese gang, like leaving a bar basically. And so I used to go to this place all the time called the Camel Bar, Luo Tuo Jiu Ba, which was popular in Kunming. It's been there for years and years. I think it just closed in the last 3 or 4 years. But it opened probably in the early 2000s. I think a British guy, maybe his Chinese wife, opened it. And by the time I lived there, I think they already lived in the UK. I don't think they lived there at that time. But anyway, this bar was pretty cool. It was, they had a mix of Chinese and Western food. And one of the things that was different about like most places is that obviously most of the bars or clubs close at like, let's say 2, 3, 4 a.m. And this bar, for whatever reason, I don't know if they had the Guanxi or relationship or something, they were always open like 24/7. So, you could hang out there all night until sunrise, which, I didn't always hang out there till sunrise, but quite late at night, especially when I was just a tad bit younger. I was about 26, 27 at that time. So, we'd go over there once in a while. I'd be at maybe another bar and we'd be like, oh, let's stop at the Camel Bar. It'd be like 2 a.m. And it was right next to where I lived, like less than a kilometer. So it was easy to kind of stop there on the way back home. And the other cool thing about this bar was that it wasn't really just a foreign bar either. There was actually only a few foreigners who hung out there, like me and my best friend Dave. And there was this guy, Willie, who was always there, an older guy from Belgium who, for his age, he was doing well with the ladies, and, and a few other people. So it was basically like, 90% Chinese and just a handful of foreigners that would go there, which at that time was cool for me because I wanted to meet more Chinese and I wanted to practice my Chinese language. So I'd go in there, I'd meet some guys, some friends, and especially at that time, most people had very, very basic English. So it was really good for me to practice language and have a good time drinking and playing dice games or whatever we did back in the day. And so on one night we walk in and I'm not sure exactly the time. It was probably 2, 3 a.m. And my buddy Dave, who's the nicest guy in the world, he's from South Carolina, the USA, super chill, big guy. And he's got his backpack with him usually because, he maybe came from work or whatever that day. And he just bumped a guy, some, small Chinese guy. Dave's huge, he's about 6'3", 6'4", 250 at least. But the nicest guy in the world. So he had no bad intention. But, the guy's drunk. It's 2, 3 a.m. And he actually pushed Dave, kind of like David and Goliath, And Dave's like, come on, dude. You're like half my size and weigh about 100 pounds. And so he's like, whatever. Dave just kind of was like, no big deal. And, we got a couple of drinks and, we're hanging out a bit. And, we didn't realize this guy's like Hei Shihui, like black society in Chinese, like a mafia guy. Okay. And so he ended up calling like a gang of people. And so like we were inside, we hear something going on and there's some kind of commotion. And they're like, dude, we can't go outside. Like there's a fucking, 15, 20 people waiting outside, like to, jump us basically. And so we were like, well, let's call the police. And we knew the bartenders there and the people, they knew enough English, knew what was going on. And, they had called the police a couple times. I remember I was even back in the kitchen kind of waiting because maybe some people were at the front and they were like, just go in the back for a bit. So we were like in the back of the kitchen for a while. And, eventually after like 2 hours, I was kind of like, dude, I'm not going to stay here all night. It's already like 5:30 or something like that. Like, I got to go home, if the police or whatever aren't coming. And of course, I've had a lot to drink and, you're feeling invincible, this kind of thing. And yeah, I walked out and as soon as I was like stepping off the first step, the guy had come out with the cattle prong and just fucking hit me. And I just dropped to my knees. As I said, I got up and I just saw as many Chinese people as I could see and just laying out as many as I could. And of course, Dave was like, oh shit, here we go. And, he started fighting too as well. And we got dogpiled by, there's probably 7, 8, 9 guys jumped on each of us. And so we were down on the ground and they were hitting and kicking or whatever. And luckily we did have another buddy with us, Vince, and he was actually bigger than Dave even. He's like a linebacker, really big. And in this case, he could have been very useful to fight with us, but it was actually good that he actually broke up the fight basically, temporarily. So he got all those guys off us. Those guys ended up going to their cars and getting weapons. And in that time, we hopped in the taxi and then we took off and headed back to my place. And so I had a black eye and some bruised ribs and maybe cracked ribs or whatever. And Dave his head was bleeding and stuff like that. So he ended up either going to the hospital first or the police station. I just went home, but at first I was like, oh, let's go back and fight him. You know, you're drunk and be stupid and invincible. Of course, it was a good idea not to, because, you know, they had grabbed, like when we got into the taxi, they were hitting the taxi with like chains and bats and shit. So I don't know if anyone had a knife or anything, but, you know, it would only take one stab or, you know, one big hit and, you know, you could be killed. And that happens in China occasionally. You know, late night things happen in clubs or bars, because everywhere in the world, people at 4 or 5 in the morning are just completely trashed, right? Which is one of the reasons why I never go out like real late like that. To me, like 2 a.m. is good enough. You know, my hangover is going to be bad enough the next day. I don't need to be out till 5, 6 a.m. because everyone's just retarded basically. And this kind of thing can happen. Someone gets mad over something for no reason and someone gets stabbed and that kind of thing happens. So anyway, Dave went to the police station and he's bleeding and everything. And who's there? The guy who attacked us or had the people attacked. So he went there first. And Dave's like, oh, that guy's here. And he's like, and so what that guy basically did was he was saying we attacked him. So he was maybe protecting himself or something like that. And of course, Dave's bleeding and everything like that. And it's not believable at all. I mean, if me and Dave had attacked that guy, you know, he'd be in pretty rough shape. We were actually lucky that we weren't in worse shape, because I know in the States, if I got jumped by a bunch of people in, you know, let's say Europe or the States or many countries by like, you know, a dozen guys, 15, 20 people, we would definitely be in the hospital, if not almost dead, right? So luckily the guys there are super big in Kunming, so we weren't too bad off. And so anyway, you know, we set up kind of like a court date, right? And so we would go back and like say the story. It was like a week or two later, and make the report. And you know, normally in these cases, right, that person who's guilty would have to pay for some type of damages and this kind of thing. And so yeah, we set up that date. And we got there, and they're like, "Oh, he didn't show up." We're like, "Okay, well, if the guy who attacked us didn't show up, like in the States, that just means, you know, you go to jail basically. There's a warrant or whatever, or you know, you'd have to come back to court another time." And it was like, that's just it. And so I kind of knew at that time it was like, you know, this guy had some connections with the police too, and it's like nothing was going to happen. So it was just a waste of our time. And so luckily we didn't get hurt. And you know, at that time too, I mentioned in the other video, I had just recovered from my second surgery on my legs. I was in Kunming because I got ran over by an SUV. I just made a video of that. You can check that out. And so about a year later, I got surgery in Thailand. So I think it was either right before or after that surgery. So it was really bad anyway, that my leg was just trying to heal. And then I got attacked by a gang. So not the best treatment for recovery. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my story. I got a few more like that over the years of pretty insane stories. And I'll do those later on. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.